Hey, hey, hey. We are back for some story time today. No makeup, no getting dressed. It's like half of the motivation and the fun to get up and do these videos to make sure I put myself together. However, this might also be a shorter one. I'm going to go on a walk this morning, and I just felt like I wanted to kind of get this off of my list for the day. I do want to say for anyone who has never done like a vlog or a video diary or whatever the case may be, whether you are someone who is known or not known, it doesn't matter. Just doing the few videos I've already done, I have to say it's been quite therapeutic to go through the stories, the perspective, the things that look like pain, that look like devastation in the moment, and one, be able to be sitting here and witness myself sitting here far from it and sitting here healthy and okay, and even happy, and being able to extract like a different understanding of myself, of the world, really, of people. It's been really helpful. So much of how we feel every day is about the story that we have circulating in our mind. The story we decide on is a story of I am a happy person or I'm not a happy person. I'm a person who's always attacked. I'm a person who is marginalized. I'm a person who is harmed, who is dismissed, or I'm a person who is sought after. I'm a person who is welcome. I'm a person who is needed, even if people pretend to not welcome me, right? I am a desirable person. I am love at its core. I am a happy person. I embody happy, right? So you can't do things to a person like that who feels that they embody something like that, um, and shift how they respond, because their lens, their whole being is wrapped around coming back to their equilibrium of what they have identified as happy or joy or love or whatever. So what you experience every day is really what your mind says that you are experiencing. It does not mean that people are not doing things, but things can be identified as good, bad, and different depending on what meaning you place on it. Someone can do a bad thing, and you can um, make it a devastating thing by placing the meaning on the thing. This is really quick. It'll probably come up in a future story. One, like a thing that happened to me after a whole lot of things have been happening, but I was like in full on everyday meditation, hermit mode. So it was a different response at that point of things that would bother me. There were bad things happening, but I was at the beach, which is like my sanctuary, right? It is the space for me to come back to center. And I called someone and let them know that I was going to the beach. So I knew if someone knew that I was at the beach. Anyway, by the time I got done from the beach, my scooter was stolen. It's my stand-up electric scooter. And I'll get into my car discussion also in a later video. So that was my only mode of transportation, that and maybe Uber, right? So I go to the beach to decompress, to get myself back together, to offload some things, right? And what I see when I'm done offloading, I'm done with church, so to speak, right? Is that someone has stolen something from me. And this is me knowing that a lot of things are happening very intentional to me to put me in a position of being frantic and being like, why does this keep happening to me? And there's so many ways I could have responded in that moment. The way that I responded was, I'm in a really flowy mode right now. I'm going to go home. So I called an Uber and I went home, and I processed it the way that I need to, but it was a very quick processing. And within about 2 days, I had bought a better new scooter with money that I manifested. It was that simple. My energy could have been the energy of like stuckness and angriness or vengeance and like finding out and getting to all the things. This is not me saying you shouldn't defend yourself when people do things, but again, when I get into that era, into that story, I'll also explain why there's certain things I didn't do to quote unquote protect myself, but to protect my peace for sure. Okay, that said, you're the dog. Okay, so I have a few photos today from September 2021. So I'm just kind of looking at them and seeing where I was at and what I was doing. And yeah, I was definitely feeling myself. I was definitely smelling myself at this point in time. So the photo, one of the first photos I have up here is from a hotel because I had gone to my very first conference, being a sexologist, right? I really wanted to get into the community. So at this point in time, this is still COVID. And because of COVID, and I had my private practice in Boca Raton, Florida. So my practice was beautiful practice. I had waited years to get my office. It was like the perfect office and the perfect setup, my little meditation chair. I was introducing things into the community that I know a lot of us had not been introduced to. We definitely weren't talking about them in therapy. So I was able to really do some nice integrative things without scaring people away. Well, so this is what would be funny. Being in my practice, my therapy practice, and I've been in practice for about 10 years now. So being in my practice, what I would get is either people who were local to the area, which were typically of a race and economic status that might have been a little bit different than mine, at least a race. But uh, there's times that I would, which I don't understand because everyone looks at pictures of people, but I have a website and all this stuff, right? I've picked people up from the lobby after the receptionist called me to bring them back to my office, and they're like, "Oh, are you going to bring us to meet with Joy?" Like, I am she is I, we are Black. That's really like that's what they were thinking. Like, who is this? Like, it's me. Um, and that was a regular part of like a poke that would happen at my practice that people would poke me about different things, but they would make it very clear that we are different and how did you get here? You know? How did I mean, I've even had women, again, not of my culture, but maybe a similar name, they're like, how did you get your last name? Trying to figure out which one of their people I married, who did I steal? How did I get in here? Anyway, um, it was everything is meant, right? And it was sent to me to manage the challenge of other people's truths coming into your space and then having to manage their mind around how they're going to be comfortable with it, right? And so also being a therapist, right? You want people to be comfortable to a point to be able to share things with you, but this is also an experiment of um, social shifts that can happen. Your therapist is a part of that. Your therapist is a regular person in the regular world. And there's a lot of things going on during COVID. There was a lot of things going on racially. Like there's a lot of stuff happening, right? And so giving people this opportunity to speak authentically. And I'm not here to correct you on like your weird thoughts. I'm just here to live, right? And you can either pick up the cue that your weird thoughts are incorrect or maybe they're correcting your service. I don't know. It doesn't, I'm not here to prove a point in therapy. It is your therapy to process through things. But I do think it was very therapeutic for people to be in a healing space where they did not expect from what I looked like. And I am in my guys, I'm in my walking clothes, right? This is not what I dress like in my practice, but whatever. Simply because I was in the city I was in and there was no one there in that city that looked like me, that was enough. Actually, the people who were in the city that looked like me all worked for them. I know this for a fact because things would be said to me about people who may have been from a similar background as mine. They don't quite know my background. So they would talk about particular backgrounds, let's say Caribbean cultures, right? And these assumptions, those I would correct. Like that's wild. You can't just be walking around saying stuff like that. Um, but always in a very like holding space for you, not making you feel like awful, but like let's just bring it back to reality and give you time to process the different forms of reality, right? So that was really a good challenge. Now, that said, I loved what I had started to flow with, whatever I was in, like I said, I was in my practice and I was starting to do groups for the platform that I was on. I was doing really well with that. And then everything got shut down. So I had to close my physical practice. I had to let go of my office. After about 2 weeks, we realized we weren't all coming back. Everyone was just like, oh, I'll be back in a couple of weeks. That's not what happened. And so therefore the online thing really kind of picked up. My practice was actually full. I was full. Um, so I was seeing clients as well as doing groups. I just started doing groups, whatever. But the point is, during the time frame of these pictures, I was doing really well. I was in a really good space. Our relationship was open. I was going to the things that I thought from a professional standpoint would be great. It was a Sex Out South conference in Atlanta that I went to. And it was also, I'm trying to think what else. Uh, oh, I was in my PhD program. Hello. I gave up the practice. I no longer had to pay every month for, a whole other place. I had my mortgage I was paying plus that. And so I basically decided to invest in my education and my growth, my understanding of us. And it's something I always wanted to do. And I was not able to do it while I was married the last time. It was a very clear, like, you can't be a sex therapist. Like, you can't do that. I was already being accused of sleeping with clients by the end of my marriage. That's just not something that even crosses my mind. However, I went back to school and I paid for it with not paying for the office, right? And so I think some of these pictures are me really stepping into my little PhD student mode, but sexy PhD student. So I think while I was in my PhD program, I felt like my relationship was getting even more fun, but that's because I was having more fun. That's the funny thing. Like, I went to this conference and I realized through these pictures that I was at the conference by myself. And it was not actually strange for me to be traveling by myself at this point. I started to travel, not a whole lot of places because, again, it was during COVID. But even after COVID, like, I remember I was traveling more alone because my partner was making it seem as if they couldn't afford to go to the spaces with me. And that, I'm not saying that that wasn't actually true. Um, but I would say that that was that happiness of me growing and expanding and seeing how we can really manifest the things we want. Because the place that I was in, that I was teaching in groups, that I had a full practice, that I was even getting a degree that I wanted to get. These are all things that I had sat and I had said to myself, I had written down in a journal. Like, I had manifested these things. There's lots of times in my life that when reflecting, I sat and reflected. I was like, oh my gosh, everything that I've ever had, I thought about it before. The cars that I had, I remember the very last car I had, like, I've seen this car in my mind before. I built this in my mind and then I put it away and then it manifested like years later. But everything that I've had, I realized, like, oh my gosh, I told the story about this before it got here. So everything was beautiful. So I'm also realizing, I think when I told the story to myself in my journal, maybe I didn't like write in what me and my partner would be doing. We're just like, that's wild. I wonder why I didn't do that. Because I was happy to have a partner. But if they couldn't go with me, I wasn't gonna not go, you know? It was also pretty controversial because I really wanted to go and you couldn't go to this conference without getting a COVID shot. And that's not what we were doing in that moment. And it was a little bit heart-wrenching to feel like I didn't have that autonomy. That was a whole thing in a discussion that would come up. My partner did not get the shot. Just, he wouldn't go anywhere where he would have to get it. But this is something where I had to choose between, like, my passion and the road that I knew I could feel intuitively, like, this is the way that I'm supposed to go. It didn't have to be that conference, but the conference was a symbolism of me breaking out of the regular. I was doing all the things that I said I wanted to do, no matter what, and there's sacrifices to these things. And sacrifice, went to the conference. The conference was great. The next year of the conference, I was actually a part of it and I was teaching my class, but that was after I had graduated, basically. So I go to this conference and it's great. And I remember trying to think, yeah, like one of the last pictures. So there's this picture where I'm sitting in front of the steering wheel and my shirt says Texas on it. You can't think this is Texas because my partner was from Texas. And I think we had just gone, yes, we had been traveling a little bit. So we had gone to Texas, came back. Um, but the reason I'm reflecting on this now, and I have to kind of go slow because I want to remember some of the stuff that was happening. I remember that even though everything was wonderful and I was in my PhD, traveling to conference, I'm so sexy bag. I have this partner, I have security, I have everything that I could possibly want. My kids were taken care of, like they were living with me, everything was fine. Um, there were probably so many things going on in the background that I wasn't privy to or really focusing on. I'm not the type of woman who checks your phone. I don't do that. I don't look at likes on Instagram. I don't do any. I just don't. Um, we, my partner and I, and at this point, it was probably some other partners that were in place at this point, right? And I think that was a part of like feeling pretty empowered too. Like we were in our full like poly world and trying to be smart about it. And that was also a part of me going back to school. I mean, so when you're getting your PhD, you're doing research. You're doing research on other people's research, but you're also coming up with your own stuff, right? So I was in the midst of really pulling apart the whys and the why nots and the shame that we have around our relationships and what keeps us from doing like even going to this conference, right? Like people wouldn't, some people might not even want to say out loud. They're going like, what do you need to go to a sex down something? I mean, but I was so not in a space of shame and I felt very supported in not feeling shame, right? But I think so much so that wanting to step into that liberation, it was I also left behind paranoia, which maybe there's a healthy amount of paranoia or a healthy amount of discernment, right? My intuition was very much away from worrying about having to not I wouldn't say that I wasn't pouring into my relationship. I don't know what my partner would say, but um it became clear to me that the priority was my growth. So this what I also reflect on this, and I'm sure like future things will show a little bit of this, um, is that when you're in a relationship and you are a growth minded person, right? If your partner is not growth minded, like that's not what they're interested in, they're not, they don't have to be interested necessarily, even if they're not interested in the same religion, faith, practice, whatever. But if they're not interested in actually a person expanding their mind, if what they are very much invested in is sameness, keeping everything exactly the same, right? Oh my God. Could you guys even hear me? I even have the mic in the wrong place. We're gonna pray that you can hear me. Because again, I want to go walk. Okay, so when you are in this trajectory of growth, okay, you and your partner, you're in a trajectory of growth. Eventually, your partner's going to have to grow with you in some way, be interested in your growth, support your growth, and you support theirs. It's nice to have a way that you're growing together, that you have an understanding of something together, right? Like there was a partner, one of my partners really, that I would practice sacred sex with. And I can't necessarily go back to regular sex at this point in my life, right? Um, but if I'm with a partner who's not interested in anything sacred about sex, how can I continue to engage with them, right? If they don't want to even know what it is, if they don't want to just tap into the feeling, even if it's just with me and it's not with anyone else, it's you can't continue to do it. If it's like being vegan in a house with someone who's a carnivore, which literally I wasn't vegan, but he was carnivore. Um, how does that work? And it's not that it doesn't work, but what if I cook all the meals and I cook and meat is cooked in all the pans and maybe I don't want meat in my pans. Maybe even the smell of meat makes me sick now. I don't know. But I'm saying all that to say that this could be happening in a very insidious background way that you don't even realize because you're living your best life. And I was absolutely living my best life. Say it again. I'll say it again, probably again later. I don't regret anything. It's just like, aha. um, what I think that I could have done differently in this space really was ask like really say the words out loud like is this going too fast for you? I remember when I wrote my book, the first book, and I was with my partner then, and this was in COVID, right? And I remember the kids weren't there because their dad had when I came back from California, I'd come from a speaking event This is right when I'm talking about like the day that COVID started. Okay, shutdown started. The kids came, they were being dropped off at my house, but then not really. I realized like brought them to the house and then took them back to his house. I found out, well, like, the kids told me, like, I'm like, come and give me a hug. But their dad had told them, don't touch me, don't be like, and this is my narcissist terrorist. Okay. These were very normal, horrific things that would happen throughout my relationships, throughout my life after having my kids, or no, after leaving my husband. It was very much a constant attack on like my validity as a human being, as a mother, as a partner, as a like anything. Like really, like you are nothing. So let me make sure you remember every time we engage that you are nothing. So during this time period that I'm talking about here with the pictures was a time period where I was able to also better protect myself because of COVID from my terrorists, right? Like there was no, we weren't doing all the back and forth. The kids were actually being taught at home in my home because they live with me. So I was able to like, there was just more peace when there was less reasons to engage and that type of thing. And as the years have gone on, I have learned more. I'm in absolute no contact with this other than being brought to court as a reason or a way to consistently haranguing me. Um, so Okay, so that is one thing. So, okay, I'm sitting here in this space. I'm glad I said that. I'm sitting here in this space thinking that everything is going good. I'm in school. I'm doing my work. I'm getting into the community the way that I can around my sexology practice and work and research and all that type of stuff. I'm literally in the midst of writing a second book for my PhD on top of doing my dissertation and all the things that you have to do. Okay, I'm in class. And then randomly I get a text message. Remember, I can't say what day it was, whatever. Random text message. I have a work cell phone and I have a personal phone, and my work cell phone is listed, my websites, all that type of stuff, right? So I get a text message. Was it during this time? I don't want to like give it if it wasn't during this time. I feel like it was like right in the beginning of uh, let's say it was around maybe possibly kind of getting close to this time. But I got a text message from someone who said, does your live-in boyfriend know that you're, I mean, like you're sneaking out and you're sleeping with, they didn't say a name, like some other person or blah, 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 blah. But this is how they started. They said, hey, you catfish smelling gorilla. I can guarantee you this was a person who didn't look anything like me. I know who it was. That's the thing. Like, I'm trying not to use names. I'm like, Anyway, so I get this text message, which is an indicator to me, like, oh, there's a hater. Big deal, right? We were in a community where people knew who we were, right? And I also would grow to understand that, and we would have these arguments and discussions around people literally, people literally dating my partner because he was with me, right? And this is not me tooting my horn or whatever. This is just what it is. It is simply what it is. He's a partner. They probably wouldn't even thought about dating if he was just walking down the street by, like, he's not that person. He's not. But because he was dating me, they're like, oh, different flavor, and she's trying, so we should try. So it would be a lot of like just like weirdness going on. And so say I was going on a trip for work, or I was in school, like I was in class. Class would be like 8 hours at a time. Say I was doing whatever I was doing. My relationship is open and I have my partners. And so my partner is utilizing these opportunities to gain clout and hyper engage with people. This is anybody who is in a poly relationship. I'm going to tell you something. Like, this was my fault. Again, stuff is coming to me in this moment. Probably not tending to my partner in the way that they needed to be tending to, which required more from me than what I was giving or had to give. When they met me, I was not writing a book. My practice was not as booming. And it was because of COVID that it got like really busy. I wasn't teaching groups the way that I was teaching, like everything increased when I got with them. So on one hand, it could feel like, man, being with this person, we're able to imagine so much and do so much and do so well together. But at the same time, my partner would start to really resent me. And I remember even with writing my book, he was very upset. Like, I haven't had attention for this long. I would write all during the day. And then at night, we would hang out, whatever. There was nothing to do. There was COVID. There was literally nothing to do. So, and at that time, there weren't even clients. Like, it was just like that quiet period of everyone trying to figure out what's going to happen next. We couldn't go to work. There was nothing to do. All right. So anyway, he was bored, and that was just like an out loud cry that I'm recalling now that probably applied to a lot of times, and a lot of reason why they would tap into so many different partner options. But also, he was a hoe. So what are you gonna do? So anyway, um during this time period where there were like these little kind of sirens of there's a problem, I really could not see that. I really did not believe that. And even I would say when I went through the role thing, even though I might have put up the Texas picture for you, the last picture was the Texas picture. I was feeling very, very comfortable in a space where what was probably comfortable about it was that it was more comfortable than my previous relationships at this point, right? This person was not like outwardly controlling where other people had been. But it doesn't mean that they didn't desire the same things that other people desired or the same level of attention. So that was my bad on me for not being inquisitive enough, for not eliciting the truth. Now, it's hard when you're with someone who telling the truth is like third nature for them. However, I do feel like we have a responsibility, no matter how much we're on our glow up or whatever, we have a responsibility to our calling. Like, that was never going to stop. No, nothing's going to stop that. And there's lots of things that have happened to me that I could have stopped, but I can't. Like, this is what I know that I'm supposed to be going in a certain direction, and that's what I do, right? But if you aim to do it with somebody, you do have to take in consideration how you have to split that energy. So then it also, I would also then explore, are you supposed to have a partner during this time period? Selfishly, I'm going to say having a partner helped me, right? It gave me the confidence to do things that other people were afraid to do. And so they couldn't give me the advice, yes, do it, right? Whereas I was connected with a person who would say, yes, do all the things, whether or not they resented it. I don't think they knew that they were going to resent it when I really got into it and I really got excited. I was doing a whole lot more filming for the company I was working for. I was doing commercials. I think this is also the time period where I was like, yes, I had gotten on a podcast, right? It was probably like my first podcast, actually. I was and it was a big podcast in the community. So that is when everything really like, oh my God, I saw you on the podcast, where everything started booming. And I started to also be able to work with more people that I wanted to work with because they were aligned with the thing that I had been talking about or whatever. And just talking about therapy in our community, like normalizing it. So it was a beautiful opener for a lot of different things. But all these things that I had done, whenever I did them, I was being recognized by myself. It wasn't even Dr. Joy at that point, but I was being recognized by myself. And if you're also with a partner who enjoys being recognized, please know, ladies, gentlemen, whoever it is, like, if you know that your partner loves being looked at, if they have an Instagram where they make it clear that they like being looked at, and you start to build a life where they're not looked at like you, with you, yes, your partners can absolutely become jealous of you, and they can absolutely start to plot against you. This is not something that I'm like, be paranoid all the time that your partner, but be very discerning around where your partner is at, knowing if the person who's in your corner is actually in your corner. I would have pretty transparent conversations, and I would get the truth if I asked the right questions. But there's some questions that I wouldn't think to ask, like, are you betraying me? Are you the reason that this person is sending me a text message? Are they actually mad because we're together? I don't know. Whoever sent me the message, I think, may not have actually known about my relationship style or whatever the case may be, which was all. So I actually had him get on the text chain with me. The level of petty. When they were like, "Oh, you catfish smelling gorilla," right? At the moment, at the time, there was like a Bitmoji that had a gorilla, and he already had his Bitmoji made, like of his person. So I had him jump in there, and he's like, "Oh, good thing I love catfish." And then he sent like the Bitmoji of somebody's gonna be offended by this. I'll get over it. Whatever. Him with a gorilla, like, and it was like hearts. And the point was, my thing where I was coming from with it, and I added him in the chain, was like, you can't scare me about information you think you have about me, right? This is something that actually I thought about last night on my walk. A lesson, a thing. In terms of like my sexual orientation, it's all over. My second book is about being bisexual, being a woman of color, and surviving the barriers that we have, how to move through those, right? Um, Sexual orientation, my relationship dynamic, whoever I'm with, I'm not a cheater. Like that's not what I do. I really do try to be ethical. It doesn't mean that I'm always ethical because especially if I'm with someone who's not being ethical, and so by default, I'm not being ethical because I don't know that they actually have this situation going on. I'm believing what you're saying. Um, but I'm not perfect. I'm not even trying to act like it's not the case. But what I am not a person, what I don't do is I don't have secrets or skeletons in the closet because I don't want to be the sucker who is held by the balls by somebody who is like, if you don't do this for me, I'm going to tell everyone. I'm like, homie, I just posted it. What you talking about? There's no blackmailing, Joy. There's no blackmailing me. I make a point of this. Like you can't, there's nothing. So, this is not me saying you should go around like, let me tell you all my secrets, right? But this is regular conversation for me. The things that I engage in my life, I have certain conversations with certain people where it's relevant, right? But I'm not afraid. There's not going to be a time that you ask me a question and then like start sweating about something. If I don't want to tell you something, I'm just not going to tell you, and usually that's only because I think that you're asking so that you can either maybe utilize this to tease me, to mock me. I'm not so much concerned about people gossiping. I think it's weird. It's a very icky, energetic thing to do, and it comes back on you. But say what you want. Like you're gonna say the truth. Like, and then she walked down the street and turned left. Can you believe that? That's the equivalent of me, somebody being like, "Oh, she was with this woman, or she was with this guy in the club," or whatever the case may be. The equivalent to me is Joy walked down the street and turned left. Like, okay. You're weird. But if that's what like gets you happy, and I think that would be a part of like people sending texts like that, like what would make people very unhappy with me is because I would not be unhappy about that type of stuff. But that is the type of thing that would probably aggravate their lives. The person who texted me, I know was actually cheating on their partner. Like that's just funny. And they know that if someone sent them something like that, like when it indicates like you've been watching me, where are you watching me from? That was also the beginning of the awareness of my stalk-y journey. There's a few people who follow me either virtually or literally in person. I'll talk about that in other stories, but that was probably the beginning of it. But that was also something I'm going to say because I was in my era of really smelling myself that I didn't take it seriously. Like I didn't take, I'm like, plus I've got my partner, everything is great. I got my kids, I got my money, we're good. What are you talking about? Like nothing can affect me. At that moment, I was definitely growing in my spiritual journey, right? And like I said, I was practicing more sacred sex because that was important. But in that expanded my spirituality as well, it deepened my spirituality, all the practices I was doing. But things like that, I did not take them as like full on attacks. I just took them as people being disgruntled or petty or whatever. Looking back, I think that I wish that I had taken some of these things, when I say more seriously, not to be afraid of, but maybe to protect from or to investigate kind of the motivation why. Because why was some random person texting me about like They were clearly trying to get me to stop doing something, to be afraid of something. Why? Well, because they're sleeping with one of these partners. That's why. In my mind, I was like, they're just weird. Like, but hello, it didn't cross my mind. I'm like, pay attention is a lesson. Like, pay attention to the sacrifices you're making, to the things that are not said, right? That are left unsaid. And also, my partner didn't freak out about it. He wasn't like, oh my God, he's texting you. He just, because he probably also knew. Man, I'm so smart and so not sometimes, right? And I think for those of us who are like really smart, we got them high IQs, or we be missing stuff. We be missing stuff. Oh. Okay. So I think that's pretty much it for story time today. I think that's enough of like, don't miss the things, pay attention, understand in a relationship, if you are in a growth trajectory and your partner is not, you're probably going to lose your partner at some point in time. Don't just ignore it and be like, well, you could just fall to the wayside. Our partners are important. Like, even though my partner, like I said, in hindsight, was a hoe and a con man and a liar. It was necessary ushering into my next spaces in life. He was necessary. He was loved, right? For the things that were lovable and useful and whatever. And even for the little dirty things that he did, because I learned from all the tricks. I learned from heartbreak. I learned from being deceived and being secretly attacked. Like I said, that was just the beginning. This continues to grow. I'm like, oh my gosh, but I learned. And can I say that I'll never be deceived again? No, because I can't stop someone from spewing deception out of their mouths. However, we can protect from like the spaces that we're going into. Once someone lies to you one time, this is going to sound harsh to y'all. Whatever. Okay. A person who lies once is a liar. Like, that's what they do. Like they breathe, they lie, you know? My ex, especially the narcissist, like, seriously, I mean, I was in court and said, I told the judge, I was like, he's lying. Everything he says is a lie. And when he's not speaking, he's thinking about his next lie. When he's breathing, he's lying. So some people you just have to know, and you got to know how to exit spaces with them, how to exit conversations with people who are just consistently manipulative. You're wasting your breath. You're wasting your time. Even texting that person back was a waste of time. Typically, I don't like to get into like the going back and forth. Like, who is this loser texting you out of nowhere? Like, they're a weirdo. They are a loser. They're a weirdo. Like, why are we engaging them? They clearly have nothing to do, which is why they're texting us. We're busy over here, meditating, having great sex, eating good food, doing stuff. Why do we care? We should not have cared. But at the same time, I should have cared enough to really like ask some more questions other than like kiki. So pay attention, check on your partners, pay attention to your growth, what's hindering your growth. Be realistic about if the connections that you have are keeping you stagnant or they're supporting where you're going. And just do a check-in with your energy for your environment, like who's there, that type of thing. I think that's it for today. Okay, for real. That's it. I'm going to go for a walk and I will see you in the next video. Bye.